Hey guys, it's Cam here. Welcome back to the Build Room. Now, if you own an R34 or you're thinking about buying one, this episode is a must for you. A common problem on R34s is that at some point in their life, the in-cabin climate controls are gonna stop working. But don't lose your cool, because that's the fix that I'm gonna be showing you in this week's episode. So stick around and check it out. All right, so if you remember a few episodes ago, I showed you guys how to fix the heater core, and that involved taking the aircon out. And we had to degas the aircon, sort out the heater core, and then put it all back together. Now, this car has not been regassed yet, and that is for a couple of reasons. Firstly, I just haven't had time. But secondly, I can't actually test the heater controls when I take it in, which means the guys that regas the system aren't really going to be able to check it because the heater controls don't work. So if we have a look inside the car, I'll turn this thing on to get rid of that beeping. Okay, so with the ignition on, you can fairly quickly see my problem. See the time over here? That is set by the hour and minute buttons here and the reset button. Now, I'm not touching any of them at the moment, and it's just incrementing on its own. That will basically lock up the panel and it stops other things working. I'll give you an example. If I hit the front, that will work, right? So it's gonna turn everything on. We've got fans, they're going, but even with it on, I can't change the speed of the fans, I can't change the mode, I can't turn it off. The only thing I can do is turn the defrost off again. Right, so those two buttons are working. It could be that this entire panel is not working. And in addition to that, recirculation button works, but my fresh doesn't. So to me, it looks like either these two with the clock running up, it's still running as you can see. If you can imagine someone pressing down on the minute button and just holding it down like resetting a watch or something like that, quite often it will stop the other buttons working depending on the way the circuits are built. So I don't know whether by fixing this, we're gonna fix this, we'll try. But if we do fix this and this continues to be broken, we'll also have to look at those as well. So yeah, it's quite a frustrating problem to have, especially at the moment. It's summer, it's about 42 degrees outside. So I really want aircon if I'm gonna be driving this thing further than just down the street. Now I have found some information on the internet on how to fix this stuff, but it never really goes into a lot of detail. And if you're not particularly comfortable with vehicle electrics or electronics and things like that, it's a little bit daunting. And if I'm honest, I am not an electronics guy. I'm pretty comfortable with vehicle electrics, or at least older vehicle electrics, but in newer stuff and definitely electronics, I'm way out of my depth. I have a soldering iron, I don't use it that much, and I never use it on circuits. So this is gonna be something new for me, but if I can do it, you guys at home can do it too. Now, we're gonna have to pull the dash apart to get to this, but the first step is gonna be in the engine bay, so let's have a look at that. All right, if we take a brief second to marvel at this OEM looking engine bay, if you watched the last episode, you can see all the work that it took to get it looking like this, and moment done. And so now we can get into the first step when you're working on any of the car's electrical systems, and that is to disable the battery. So I have an isolator, which makes it easy. If you don't have an isolator, just take your negative battery terminal off completely, and now you're good to work on the electrical systems without the worry of shorting out anything electronic, or worst case scenario, creating a fire. So if we have a look at the console now, off camera while we're doing this, in addition to doing the climate control, I'm also gonna put a new head unit in because I don't like this one, and I might take the opportunity to paint over or at least remove this paint and put good paint down to fix up the shoddy looking job here. But to just get the climate control out, there's not that much that needs to happen. So what I'm gonna do first and foremost is just protect a few pieces. So to start off, I'm just gonna put some tape across the center console. I don't expect this to stick well because there would have been 1,000 layers of Armor All and stuff like that on this over the years, but when I go to lever things to get access, we don't end up marring up this surface. So there's 4 real components here. We have the vent surround, we have the climate control unit, we have the double DIN unit for the stereo, and there's normally a little pocket here, and then we've got the bottom section, which is the transmission lever surround, which also incorporates the ashtray. So with that protected, I'm just gonna start at the top, and I'm gonna use a levering tool just to pry out this top piece. Now there's a couple of clips on the back of this, but they're clips that are designed to snap free, and then get that whole unit out. And then on the back, if you can see that there is a loom for the hazard switch. So we just need to remove that loom. And all we do to disconnect that is that on this white piece of that connector, there is a button to press in at the side, pull down, and then our vents are free. And you can see on the top there were 3 clips that are just going into these units to fit in. And then with that removed, you can see that there's access now to these 2 screws here, which secure the climate control unit. That's one. Throw those in your cup holder. That way you don't lose them. That's 2. Okay, and those 2 out means the top portion of this climate control and radio unit is now loose. And the bottom screws, you can see there's one in there and one in there. Normally this is obscured by a pocket, obviously. And to get those out, we need to actually take the gear stick surround out. And with the shift lever out of the way, take out our ashtray. You can see a screw in there at the back. In the cup tray too. All right, and with that screw out, there are a series of sort of plastic clips in here, which I would imagine most of mine are broken. Yeah, you can see whoever took this out probably broke them in the last one. With the autos, they're not easy to get out because you're gonna get them over this lip. So I'm gonna try and do this one-handed, but if I put enough pressure downwards on that, I should be able to just ease that past. And there will be looms on the back of this again for the steering control switch and for the lighter. So we just have to lift this up to get to the back of those. Okay, you can see this one's just a clip at the top. Push it down, pull the clip out. And then the back of the lighter, you have one to illuminate the piece itself. I've just taken the light out with it, oops. And then just a push on clip for those 2 metal terminals there. With that piece out, you can now see the 2 screws that we need to get this section out. Now, if you pay close attention, there is a couple of grounds on these. Make sure you put your grounds back in, otherwise stuff won't work. In the cup holder. In the cup holder. And now we should be very loosey-goosey. All right, so that unit should come out as a whole, all right? And then again, so you can see the brackets hold everything together there. And then on the back, we've got another few looms. So I'm just gonna put the camera in a tripod so that I can get 2 hands on this. All right, so whole unit out. And then ignore the radio for a second, but climate control unit, 2 white plugs. Just to press in, button on top to release them. 1, 2. And then here we've got the radio itself. I'm going to disconnect the loom off the back of the radio and some RCA cables, which are probably for the subwoofer. All right, so we've got the unit out in one piece. You can see a big giant bracket holding everything together. Quite a nice bracket for when you want to put an aftermarket head unit in that thing as well. But with that out, you can see in here, we now have a mess of cables. You know, the factory looms are pretty neat and tidy. This thing has been cut in by someone, whoever put that head unit in there. And they've done a fantastic job of it. There's a bunch of cables that have just been left loose. And yeah, they've simply done it by twisting wires together and wrapping them in insulation tape. So yeah, great install there, and it would probably explain why that speaker used to drop in and out all the time, and generally that thing didn't work very well. So now we can jump out of the car and get to the workbench, get the climate control unit out of this bad boy. All right, so easy enough. 2 screws on either side. And our climate control unit will come loose. Now to get the fascia off, if you're wanting to do that, there is a bunch of clips. You can see on the top here really easily. They're just like a clip that you lift up, it goes over a barb, and then you can slide it off. So one's broken already from whoever did this last time. But if you're just careful with them and move it gently, you should be able to get them up and over pretty easy. Now the bottom ones of mine, the guy hasn't put on properly either, so that came off a little bit easier than yours might, but if you're just careful, there's 4 on the bottom as well, so just pay attention to those when taking them out. And now we're starting to see the unit in all its glory. Buttons falling off and all. So we're going to take a few of those buttons off. So they're supposed to swivel up and down on 2 pins. So the ones that are falling out, that's because the pins have broken off. You can see on that one there, it even looks like it's got some glue on it, so someone's tried to repair it before, but yeah, that should be swiveling up and down off points under there. So I don't know if you can get buttons. I'll actually jump on the computer a bit later and see. Now we want to get this backing section off so that we can get access to the circuit board, which is underneath. You can see these little white things here, if you're wondering what they are. They're the LEDs that illuminate the buttons, right? And there is another few LEDs in the top that illuminate the panel here, the display panel. We'll check all of these while it's apart. So there's 3 clips at the top, 4 on the underside of the unit, and there's also 4 screws that we need to take out as well. There we go, top's off. And then before you rip it out, just check the bottom, because you want to make sure you don't snap any of those clips on the way out. So we've got that in sections now. Remove the plastic cover, which covers the back of these. And now if we're looking at the back of the board, it could be pretty daunting, but there's 4 screws there. We need to take those out and we'll be able to get access to the other side. Okay, now flip it over. I should have done this before, but we've got to take the knob, the control knob off. Just gonna unscrew it completely. All right, with that off, now when we take this out, there we go. And then if we have a look at where our buttons were, that's the hour and minute and reset buttons. You see they're coated in that brown sludge. I think when we look at the buttons from the front, we might see why. And we turn this unit over, and that's the way it sits in the car. You can see again on those buttons, the brown residue that's there. And you can see the 3 LEDs for the lights and all of the various switches behind them. The potentiometer here, which is for changing the temperature, and a liquid crystal display here. Now this black foam here gets really crispy and crusty. You can see some of it's already come off while I've been messing with it. In order to get to these buttons, this is going to have to come off. It's probably just there to stop light bleed, I'd say, but you never know. Just give that a quick brush off with a toothbrush. And then to make this a little less cumbersome to work with, I want to get the black plastic piece off the back. And to do that, we just flip it over, take out these 2 back screws, same size as the other ones. And then we should be able to slide that out. And now we've got 2 pieces which are still connected together. I'm not sure about removing those. I don't know if you can. This seems pretty tight on here. But we need it together to test it anyway. Now, in terms of fixing this thing, I'm probably going to go ahead and replace those 3 buttons at a bare minimum. But if you're not comfortable doing that, one of the things you can try to get you through, maybe it'll get you through another year or 2, is using some electric contact cleaner and cleaning out those buttons to make sure any of that foam or corrosion or anything is gone from in there, and hopefully they can move freely. Now that only works if your time was incrementing because the button was stuck down due to debris stuck in it. If the button itself is broken, cleaning it out is probably not going to fix it. But we're going to try this and we'll hook it back up and we'll see if it improves anything. So yeah, standard circuit board cleaner. Just going to give them a good blast. Give them a brush. Give them another blast. I mean, they actually don't feel too bad in terms of the return on the button itself. All right, so we're just going to give those maybe 10-15 minutes just to dry out nicely, and then we'll throw it back in the car and see if it works. All right, so I've hooked the loom back up. I've just left everything sitting there. It's not sitting on anything conductive or anything, so we don't have to worry. And we will see what happens. All right, so that's a pretty instant result. Our clock is still going gangbusters. Yeah, that's not fixed. That's definitely not fixed. So yeah, we're gonna keep moving through this and see if we can have better luck with replacing these buttons. All right, so the plan here is gonna be to remove these three. I'm just gonna replace all three switches. And if we look on the back, each switch has two poles to it. So a negative and a positive, if you want to think of it like that. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we're going to heat up the solder with a soldering iron, and once it is soft, we'll hopefully be able to pull the button out through the front, and then we just need to find a replacement. All right, so we've got our trusty soldering iron warming up. I've got that fairly low. I don't want to put too much heat into this. And all I'm going to do is use some needle nose pliers to hold on to the button, and then hopefully just wiggling it as I heat those solder points up, it'll want to slide out. In theory, like I said, not an electronics guy. I mainly use my soldering iron to melt plastic. It's good for repairing bumpers. There might be one end off. All right. That actually just dropped out with its own weight. One leg just sort of fell out once I got it hot enough, and then the other one tore off. So I don't know whether I was being too hard with it or whether it simply was corroded and broken. We'll see. It's out now, so now we've got something we can take to the electronics store and try to get a replacement of. For now, I'm just going to take the other two switches off, and then I might throw it back in the car and we'll see what it does without switches. All right, so we're back in the car. We're all hooked up. All three of those switches have been removed. Let's fire this bad boy up and see what we get. All right, we got some lights on. That's a good sign. Don't know what that means. The backlight seems to be working as well, which is nice. Let's see what we can do here. I don't remember what these buttons do, so. All right, so that's fan up, that's working. Fan down, I would assume. Yep, fan down. These ones here were for front and rear demisters, so I'll try the rear one. Yep, lights on, that's working. Let's try the front one. Yep, it's just turned on the, you can see it's directing the airflow to the front windscreen now. What else? This, I think, is for AC on and off, maybe? Oh, that's the off button, okay. And this one's the on button. Sweet. Don't know what these are. Oh, this is fresh and recirculate, and I can hear the, let's turn that down. It's working too well. All right, so yeah, that was fresh and recirculate, and I could hear the diverter flaps moving around in there. So yeah, I think that's a raging success. That's all working well once we've removed the issue of those three switches. And you know what that means, guys. If you're not really interested in fixing your clock and putting it all back together like stock, you can pretty much just slap it back together now and leave it as is, and you'll be able to use all of your aircon controls. You just won't be able to set the clock. And if you're sneaky about that, you can probably just unplug your battery at midday, put it back on, and it'll start at 12 anyway. So yeah, that is basically the quick and dirty method, but stick with me because I'm gonna go inside now and we're gonna try and fix this thing with some very cheap parts. And we're also gonna do a couple of other things that you might be interested in to just upgrade the look of it a little bit. So yeah, let's jump inside. All right, so we are in the inner sanctum now and I'm set up. So I've got my circuit board ready to roll. I've got some pliers and some screwdrivers just for general poking and squeezing. We have got some desoldering wire. That'll be important in a second. We have some soldering wire, and the important thing to note about that is 0.5 millimeter flux core wire. That's one of the smallest ones that I could find. Basically, the thinner it is, the less heat you need to put into it to melt it, and the less likely you are to overheat your components. And that is one of the replacement switches. It's not exactly the same as the ones we pull out. They were circular. You can get circular, but you can only get them online. There's gonna be a couple of week wait, and I need them now. So these were bought from Jaycar. I'll put the part number on the screen now. And I've got a bunch of those ready to roll. And then I have my soldering iron, and the soldering iron is set to 300 degrees. So apparently, like I said, I'm not good with soldering, but you're supposed to melt solder at 300 to 350 or something like that. I have gone for the lower end of that at 300 because overheating these components is a concern. So yeah, I don't want to do that. I figure I can always turn it up if I need to. I can't turn it down once I've already melted them. And then finally, we have some refreshments there so I don't get parched while I'm working on this bad boy. So we'll have to solder the 3 switches back in there, and I'm hoping they're all going to line up. We're just going to send it and see. I'm going to try and get as good a shots as I can of soldering this, and I'll set the camera up in macro mode. But my camera setup's not really ideal for this, so we're just going to do the best we can. All right, so the first thing that we've got in here is some leftover solder from when I was taking out the buttons. So what we're going to do is try some desoldering wire. Basically, that is a copper wire which is fluxed, so that when you heat up the solder, it'll be attracted to the wire out of your work surface. So we'll try that first to give you an idea. This one here is the main one that's gummed up, so we'll try and clear that one first and then tidy up the rest if we can. So we heat up the solder below it. Hopefully it's drawing it out. Got a little bit of it there. I mean, we're pulling a little bit out, but not as much as I would like. There must be an easy way to do this. Gotta be careful not to get too much heat near this side of the screen. All right, with that one mostly clean, what I am gonna do is actually just slowly run the drill through these just to make sure, but this is only a 1mm bit. It's not touching the sides, it's just gonna clean the old solder out. All right. Now we'll see if the legs of this will go in. So the legs on these are actually quite thick as well, so they're going to be a struggle to get through. Okay, so that's sitting on the surface there. And if we flip it over now, see our legs are poking out here and here. And this will be hard to do with you guys there. But what I've got to do here is come in from one side with the heat and the other side with the solder. Man, if you guys could see how close the camera is, here I'll get a shot of how close the camera is later, but I'm gonna come in from the back, I think, with the heat. All right, that doesn't look too bad. Try the other side. One doesn't look too bad either. All right, so those aren't perfect, but should be a pretty good connection. Let's do the other two. All right, we'll try for this one first. It's hard to tell. Don't have a lot of light there, but I think that's okay. We'll check it in a sec. The other one. That one doesn't look too bad either. These last two. That one. Last one. All right. Let's check these out. I don't think that one's any good. Wait for her to do that. All right, so that one looks good. That one looks dry. That one looks okay. That one looks good. Good. And good. So this one I'm just going to give a little bit more heat and a little bit more solder to, just in case. All right, I think those are going to have to do. If we flip it over, the main things is, if I haven't overheated these, they should all still click. Clicks, clicks, and clicks. And yeah, I don't think I put a lot of heat into this at all. I put way more heat in it when I was trying to melt that solder out. So hopefully the switches are good and we haven't damaged any of the other delicate components around it. So there's really not much more we can do now, but to put this back in the car and see if it works. All right, so since we were last in here, I've removed the center console and done some other things. I'll explain that to you later. But for now, we have the unit hooked back up, all ready to go. I'm just gonna fire it up. All right, so we've got a time there, and we've got a flashing, I think, what was that one? That's the button to turn on the front demister. I don't know why that flashes. It might be something to do with being reconnected, but let's try the clock buttons. Let's go for hour. All right, we're incrementing the hour. Go for minute. That's working too. And then reset, which should take our minutes down to 0. All right. Working well, sweet. And since we've looked at this last, the other thing is I fixed the dash lights. Whoever fixed the front end of the car wired up the right-hand indicator by twisting wires together. Funnily enough, they unwrapped and they were earthing out on each other, so that's no good. So yeah, we've got lights. We've only got 2 of these bottom 3 working, and then it's hard to show you on the LCD, but we've got 2 working on that one, and the end one is out as well. So that's going to bring us to the next part of this, so let's jump inside. All right, so on to the first of our upgrades, and that involves these guys. Now, that is not a sachet of Walter White's finest, although we are in WA, so you would be excused for thinking that. But these are tiny little LED lights. And there's 2 different types there. Forget about that one, I think that's in error. But we have T4.2 and T3 globes. These are LED globes and they are blue. And we're gonna use those to upgrade the lighting in not only the buttons, and they're the 3 that you can see underneath the LED display, but also on the back of this, we have 3 more lights behind the LCD that actually light up that liquid crystal display as well. And these are pretty easy to replace. You just get a screwdriver and twist the old ones out, counterclockwise, and lift out. And then we'll put our replacement unit in. Okay. In, and then just twist it off. All right, twist it in. Now, the fun thing about that is that LEDs, unlike the incandescent globes that we are replacing, are polarity specific, which means you've got a 50-50 shot. If for some reason this doesn't light up and the globe itself isn't broke, you have to take it out, turn it around 180 degrees, put it back in, and that'll convert your positive to negative, negative to positive, and hopefully it'll light up. So I'm just gonna go through and replace the 5 remaining ones, and then we'll get it back in the car and we'll see which ones are the right way around and which ones need to be changed. All right, so we're hooked up. So let's fire it up and see where we're at. Whew, they are bright blue, and we are 2 out of 3, and perhaps 0 on the LCD display. Yeah, that doesn't seem to be showing up at all. So I'm going to swap those 4 around, and hopefully it's not a case of those lights are not compatible, but hopefully we can get this one working at a bare minimum. Worst case, I will throw the old lights back in here. All right, so we swapped them around, and all right, we got 3 working on the buttons. Nothing on the display, I don't think. So look, I'm not going to mess around with this. What I'm going to do is put the old globes back in, I think, unless I can find a local replacement for the LED globes in the very short term. Let's get that sorted, and then we'll get this thing reassembled. So while I had this thing apart, if you remember, a lot of the plastics were not in great condition. I don't know if you'll be able to see that, but there's a bunch of different bubbling in the paint all across that. So yeah, I didn't like that. So I thought, you know what, while this stuff's out, I'll just give it a fresh coat of paint. And because it was in that bad of a condition, I thought I better strip it all off first. But obviously the control panel was painted, the whole stack was really painted. So I wanted to get it off without damaging the underneath plastic. So what I did is I tried some paint stripper on the ashtray first, just to make sure it was safe and it wouldn't damage anything. And it stripped the paint off really nicely. I gave the ashtray a good clean up and it was basically ready for just a light Scotch-Brite and then some plastic primer and paint, which I thought was great. And then I went on to the other plastics, which I didn't realize are not made of the same thing. And this is what we ended up with on the control unit for the air conditioner. Basically, I completely melted that plastic faceplate, which absolutely sucked. Now, I probably could have sanded this back a few times and got it smooth and then painted it and come up with something that was semi-reasonable, but I don't think it ever would have been the same. So yeah, so I went ahead and I picked up one of these, and that is the part number there. And it is a brand spanking new OEM faceplate for the climate control unit. And that is what that looks like. For those of you that are wondering, I'll get that nice and close so you can see the treatment on it. It's not a flat black plastic. It's kind of got a textured surface. I think this might have changed throughout the model years, and you can only get this one now. So yeah, you saw the part number. There is a part number where the end digits are 000, which is now discontinued. I have a feeling that might have been the one that I would have liked, which would have just been flat black. But this is the only one you can get, so this is the only one we're going to be able to use. And then the other parts, I still wasn't happy with the old surface, but I didn't paint strip those. I just tried it on that one panel first. I probably should have tried a cheaper panel for starters, but anyway, yeah, I tried it on that one first and it failed me. So I did go ahead and strip the other ones back. I gave them a couple of coats of primer and then I painted them with some silver paint. And so now I have some silver interior parts. I won't show you the rest of them now. We'll show you them when we put them in the car. So I have that. I'm not entirely happy with the finish. I was going to go a very dark, almost black, but a very dark gray color. But because I was going to end up with that in black right in the middle of it, it just seemed a little bit weird to have a nice dark gray or black here, a weird black that I didn't want to sand back and scuff up, and then back again with that dark gray color below. I just thought I probably needed a little bit more of a contrast. So yeah, silver it is. I'm not super happy with it, but I really hate the gold. I just think, I mean, it's not really a gold, it's more of a champagne, but it reminds me of the outside of the color of the car, which I don't like. And it also reminds me of an old Mitsubishi Magna I used to own, which is even worse. Ironically, I did a silver dash on that Magna 2 back in the 2000s when it was really popular. But yeah, look, I'm not exactly vibing on this, but it is what it is. It's all temporary because when we do the manual conversion, those parts will be replaced. And so that I didn't have bright silver right at the top, I also splashed out and I picked up a brand spanking new fan vent cover. It actually comes with the vents behind it as well. So that's pretty cool. Unfortunately, you just got to buy what you can get, and the textures on those are nowhere near the same. So even though I was hoping to have just black and silver, I'm going to have black, textured black and silver anyway. But yeah, it is what it is. So we might as well just keep on trucking and get this thing put back together. And assembly of this thing is going to be the reverse order of the disassembly, funnily enough. So let's get into it. All right, so we have a clean work area. The first thing we're going to be wanting to get on is the cover for the buttons. So we're just going to lay that flat, slide that in, and it should just snap back into place. All right. Okay, and then we need to screw this into place. Now there's 4 screws, and if you can see the gold screws that I've got here, there are 4 short and 6 long screws. All right. For screwing in the PCB into the main button unit, you want the 4 short and 4. All right, so with that in place, flip it over, and hopefully we've got a good feel to these buttons. All right, perfect. Now, you can see here, there are 2 broken buttons on my unit. And then it's time to get the rest of the unit back into this part of the enclosure. Board just slides in upside down. Nothing too complicated there. Now we need 2 of the 6 long screws here. 1, 2. And we're careful pushing this down. It should just snap into place. Oh, hang on. Before we do that, there is that plastic guard. I forgot about that. And this just sits over the top of the board. I don't know whether it's to stop things shorting out or anything like that, but might as well put it back in place. All right, it's just sort of held in by these clips here. Now, if we stand it up, we should just be able to snap it back together. All right, that's good there. We're good on the back. So we're together. And then 4 screws on the back. Again, they're the remaining 4 of the 6 long brass ones. All right, so that's in place. It's looking solid. The buttons fell off. I'll put them back in a sec. But yeah, everything's still looking good and in place. All right, now at this point is a really good time to make sure you clean any smudges off your LCD screen. Because once we cover them up, no amount of cleaning is going to get that looking good again. You can just lay the cover over. Then same as the rest of it, it just snaps in place. Now this button is a little bit flexible, so we have to lock that down. So we've got our washer, little low profile nut for that one. And then the piece de resistance, we can place on our newly silvered button. All right, there we have a pretty stout looking unit. Super happy with that, looks $1 million bucks. Let's get it back in the car. And step 1 for that is to get the climate control unit mounted back near the head unit in its mounting brackets. So yeah, we've got a new head unit and we're ready to bolt this thing together. Now, the button, when you drop it in, it actually overlaps the fascia panel for this. So you got to do the fascia first. And we have our nice new resplendent silver one, looking average. Oh, and I was already a bonehead and chipped the screen putting this thing together, which is extremely disappointing. So I'm just going to be really careful with reassembly from here on in. 4 screws that hold that fascia panel in place. All right, so the surround's in place. Don't worry about the fact that it doesn't sit right. There is another fascia plate to go around this. We'll put that on later. And then we've got recessed areas on the control panel that go into these little divots here. So they're pretty easy to locate. All right, that's in place. Just check that alignment. We're all good. Now we have 4 short countersunk screws, 2 into either side of the unit. And 4. And that is pretty much ready to go back in the dash. All right, so this is our current state dash hole. Yeah, there looks like there's a jumble of wires there, but there is method to the madness on this one. So I think we're at the stage where you guys should be pretty confident pulling this apart and putting it back together. And just for mass visual appeal, I think I'm going to do this in 1 click. So yeah, this is what it looks like before. And we're just going to go, all right, we are done. And yeah, I got to say, I'm not in love with the silver by any stretch of the imagination, but broken up against all this black, it doesn't look too bad. So yeah, pretty happy with things. Everything went back together smoothly. And if I reach over and turn on the car, you can see, oh, can you see? Let me see. We've got a working clock and I can fire it up and everything works, including the hour and minute and reset buttons, which weren't before. Turn that down, it's going to make a lot of noise. We can get our aircon good to go. Obviously not making any difference when the car's on, but we're all good. And if I turn on the lights, you can see the illumination on the buttons is all there as well, which is good. And if I turn off the light inside the car, you can see that we've got a lit up LED display as well. So yeah, all of that together with the silver and the stereo in and ready to go. And I'm absolutely stoked with this outcome. And the bottom line is, if all you're looking to do is fix up your aircon, $3 and you too can be in this situation, or even free if you don't want the whole thing working perfectly from now on. So yeah, where does that leave us? Well, the next stop for this thing is a date with the Fridgies to get that aircon re-gassed, because now that we can turn it on with the control panel, it's ready to go and I can finally drive in the summer heat without sweating my balls off. Now, there's a few of you that have reached out recently and said you love the channel and you want to find a way to support it. One of the questions I've been asked is if I want to support the channel, should I buy merch? The answer to that is that's really a personal decision for you. I make the merch for me. I really like wearing it. I've got a bunch of different cars on a bunch of different shirts and I'm a happy guy. The bottom line is they're not a massive money spinner for me. I really do it so that if you guys want them, you can wear them too. But the name of the game for the channel is I'm not looking for your money, I'm looking for your support. We're trying to grow the channel as much as we can. We're getting very close to that magical 5,000 number. I'd like to hit 10,000 by the end of the year if we can. I'm calling that early, which means it's probably going to go pear-shaped, but we'll see how we go. So the best way for you guys to support the channel at the moment is do the standard things, like, subscribe, and for episodes like this that you think might be handy to people, share it around. Tell your friends, share it on forums, all that sort of thing. Just help me get the word out so that if people do like it, they can keep watching. If you're liking the channel and you want to do that, that would be a really great way to help out. Now, if you are new to the channel, I'm going to do my standard spiel now, which is I'm going to link to the full Violet Crumbles episodes for my R34 Celica here, and I'm going to put some other cool stuff down here. Other than that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on The Build Room. Bye for now.